The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Ambassador Hyun-Ki walked through them as if he owned the place. Behind him came 3 other humans, their black business suits looking strange among all the colorful alien robes and armor. The chamber was huge. It could hold 1,000 beings easily. Crystal walls showed the stars outside, and floating platforms held delegates from 40 different species. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of pure energy. A few resembled walking trees. All of them stared at the 4 humans walking down the center aisle. Hyun-Ki did not hurry. He looked around the room like someone checking out a new office building. His dark eyes moved from one alien delegate to another, and somehow his calm smile made them all feel nervous. The woman beside him, Bo-Ram, carried a tablet and was already taking notes. She wrote down everything she saw. The number of exits, the types of security, the way the aliens sat according to their power. The military man, Tae-ho, walked with perfect posture. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, but his eyes never stopped, moving. He counted weapons, identified threats, and memorized every face in the room. The 4th human, So-min, smiled at everyone they passed. She noted which aliens looked friendly, which seemed scared, and which were trying to look tough. At the center of the chamber sat the High Council, 12 beings who ruled most of the known galaxy. Their leader was Chancellor Vorthak of the Trilaxian Empire. He was 8 feet tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His species had conquered 30 star systems. They were known for turning other species into slaves. Vorthak stood up from his crystal throne. His 4 arms spread wide, in what was supposed to be an impressive display. "So," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "the primitives from Earth finally arrive." The other aliens laughed. It sounded like a zoo at feeding time. Roars, clicks, whistles, and sounds that had no name. They expected the humans to look scared or confused. Instead, Hyun-Ki stopped walking and pulled out his phone. He seemed to be checking his schedule. "Apologies," Hyun-Ki said politely. "Traffic was terrible getting here. You know how it is with space lanes." He put his phone away and looked directly at Vorthak. "You must be Chancellor Vorthak. I've read about your work. Very impressive portfolio." Portfolio? He called conquering planets a portfolio like it was a business report. Vorthak's large black eyes narrowed. This was not how primitive species were supposed to act. They should be begging or crying or offering tribute. These humans acted like they were here for a business meeting. "Humans," Vorthak announced to the chamber, "you have been brought here to learn your place in the galaxy. Your species is young and weak. You have barely left your home system. Yet you dare to send ships into our space without permission." Bo-Ram looked up from her tablet. "Actually, we sent exactly 3 ships through what we calculated were the least sensitive shipping lanes. We made sure to avoid any military zones or private property. We also sent diplomatic messages 2 weeks before we arrived." "You did not wait for permission," roared General Kethmore of the hegemony. He was covered in what looked like metal scales and had teeth like a shark. "We didn't know we needed permission," So-min said sweetly. "Your laws don't actually specify that first contact requires advance approval. We checked, very thoroughly." Several aliens shifted uncomfortably. The humans had read their laws. How much did they know? Vorthak decided to get control back. He activated the chamber's hologram system. The air above them filled with images, vast fleets of alien warships, planets burning, entire species kneeling in defeat. "Behold the might of the Galactic Council," Vorthak declared. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed species that dared to defy us. Your pathetic little planet has nothing compared to our power." The holograms showed battle after battle. Cities falling, armies surrendering. It was meant to terrify anyone who saw it. The humans watched with interest. Bo-Ram kept taking notes. Tae-ho studied the ship designs and battle tactics. So-min observed which species were shown being conquered and which were shown as conquerors. When the display ended, Hyun-Ki nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for the presentation. Very comprehensive. We appreciate you taking the time to show us the historical context. Historical context. Not threats, not displays of power. Historical context. Now, Hyun-Ki continued, let's discuss terms. The chamber went quiet. Even the translator machine seemed confused. Terms? Vorthak repeated slowly. Of course, Hyun-Ki said. He gestured to Boram, who stepped forward with her tablet. We understand you're the established authority in this region of space. Earth is interested in joining the galactic community. We've prepared some initial proposals for how that might work. Boram touched her tablet, and new holograms appeared. These showed charts, graphs, and data tables. We've analyzed the current political and economic structure of the Council, she said. Earth can offer significant value to the existing system. The first chart showed Earth's population, over 7 billion humans. The second showed their industrial capacity, factories, farms, research centers. The third showed their military strength. Not impressive by galactic standards, but not nothing either. We're particularly interested in trade opportunities, Boram continued. Earth has several unique resources that don't appear to exist elsewhere in Council space. We also have a very motivated workforce and advanced manufacturing techniques. Admiral Yu, Zix of the Crystal Confederation, made a sound like glass breaking. You speak as if you have a choice in this matter. You will submit to Council authority or be destroyed. Taeho spoke for the first time. His voice was calm and professional. Admiral, we've run the numbers on that scenario. A military campaign against Earth would cost approximately 4.7 billion credits, assuming standard Council fleet deployment. That doesn't include the cost of occupying a hostile population or rebuilding damaged infrastructure. He paused to let that sink in. Several alien accountants began doing quick calculations on their own devices. However, Taeho continued, a trade partnership with Earth would generate an estimated 12 billion credits in the first year alone. The return on investment is significantly better with cooperation than conquest. The aliens stared at him. This human had calculated the exact cost of their invasion. More importantly, he had calculated the profit of avoiding it. So-Min stepped forward with a smile. We also think there might be cultural exchange opportunities. Earth has a very diverse population with lots of different traditions and ideas. We're always excited to learn from other species and share what we know. She activated another hologram. This one showed human art, music, literature, and technology. It was beautiful and complex. The aliens had expected primitive cave paintings. Instead, they saw symphonies, sculptures, and scientific theories that were clearly advanced. Earth is particularly good at problem solving, So-Min added. We love taking complicated situations and finding efficient solutions. It's kind of our thing. Vorthak was losing control of the situation. These humans were supposed to be begging for their lives. Instead, they were giving a sales presentation. Enough, he shouted. You will submit to Council rule. You will accept our governors. You will pay tribute. You will obey our laws. Hyun-Ki nodded politely. We understand that's your standard arrangement. We've reviewed the treaties you use with other species. Very well written, by the way. Your legal team clearly knows their business. He paused, and his smile became just a little sharper. However, we have some concerns about the implementation details. Boram touched her tablet again. The new hologram showed the Council's own laws, thousands of pages of regulations, treaties, and legal precedents. According to Galactic Law Section 47, subsection 12, Boram read, any species that achieves faster than light travel without assistance has the right to petition for autonomous membership in the Council. Several alien lawyers began frantically checking their law books. Section 203, subsection 8 states that Council members cannot be forced to accept governors without a formal vote of no confidence, Boram continued. And Section 7, subsection 15 requires all tribute agreements to be mutually beneficial to both parties. The head of the Council's legal department, a being that looked like a walking computer, made an electronic whining sound. The humans were quoting their own laws back at them. Correctly. Furthermore, Boram added cheerfully, we've identified several inconsistencies in how these laws are currently applied. Nothing major, just some procedural issues that might need to be addressed. Hyun-Ki stepped forward again. Look, we're not here to cause trouble. Earth wants to be part of the galactic community. We just think there might be room for improvement in how things are currently done. Improvement? Vorthak's voice was dangerous. Well, yes, Hyun-Ki said reasonably. For example, your current tribute system creates a lot of resentment among member species. That can't be efficient for maintaining order. A profit-sharing model might work better. Species contribute based on their capabilities and receive benefits based on their contributions. So-min nodded enthusiastically. Plus, the current system doesn't really encourage innovation or economic growth. If member species are just trying to avoid being conquered, they don't have much motivation to develop new technologies. The next morning brought chaos to the Galactic Council headquarters. 17 humans had arrived overnight, each carrying briefcases and tablets. They set up offices in the guest quarters and immediately began scheduling meetings with anyone who would talk to them. Do-hyun arrived first at the main conference room. He was Earth's trade representative, a man who could make numbers dance and sing. His black hair was perfectly styled, and his suit cost more than some aliens made in a year. But his smile was warm and genuine as he shook hands with confused alien delegates. "Good morning, everyone," Do-hyun said cheerfully. "I brought coffee for anyone who wants some. It's a human beverage, very energizing. We find it helps with morning productivity." The alien delegates stared at the steaming cups he offered. Several brave souls tried the coffee. Within minutes, they were more alert than they had ever been in their lives. Caffeine was apparently unknown in most of the galaxy. Do-hyun activated his presentation system. Charts and graphs filled the air above the conference table. But these weren't like yesterday's military displays. These were beautiful, elegant, and somehow made mathematics look like art. "I've been analyzing the current economic structure of Council space," Do-hyun began. "Very impressive work, by the way. Managing trade between 40 different species with completely different needs and capabilities. That's not easy." He touched his tablet and the first chart expanded. It showed trade routes throughout the galaxy, with different colors representing different types of goods. "However, I noticed some inefficiencies that might be costing everyone money," Do-hyun continued. "For example, the Trilaxian Empire exports crystals to the hegemony, who process them and sell them to the Crystal Confederation, who refine them and sell them back to the Trilaxians." The aliens looked at each other nervously. They had never really thought about that before. "That's 3 separate shipping costs, 3 separate processing fees, and 3 separate profit margins," Do-hyun explained. "A direct partnership between the Trilaxians and the Confederation would cut costs by 60% and increase profits for everyone." Ambassador Vexhai of the Crystal Confederation made a sound like wind chimes. "But the hegemony controls the processing facilities." "Currently, yes," Do-hyun agreed. "But what if they didn't have to? Earth has developed some very efficient automated processing systems. We could set up facilities in Crystal Confederation space that would handle the work, faster and cheaper than the hegemony's current operations." War Chief Kralthex of the hegemony slammed his fist on the table. The coffee cups jumped. "You dare suggest we abandon our industrial infrastructure?" Do-hyun didn't flinch. He just smiled and pulled up another chart. "Not abandon, restructure. The hegemony has excellent transportation networks and security systems. Instead of processing crystals, you could focus on logistics and protection services. Much higher profit margins, much less overhead." The chart showed projected revenues. The hegemony would actually make more money by giving up their processing facilities and focusing on what they did best, moving things efficiently and keeping them safe. Kralthex stared at the numbers. His species had been processing crystals for 300 years, but the human was right. They were much better at transportation and security. "This is all very interesting," said Chancellor Vorthak, who had been watching quietly. "But you assume we want to change systems that have worked for thousands of years?" Do-hyun nodded respectfully. "Of course, Chancellor. Change can be difficult. But I'm not suggesting we change everything at once. We could run a small pilot program, maybe just one trade route, and see how it works." He activated a new display. This one showed a detailed analysis of a single shipping lane between 3 minor species. It included current costs, projected savings, and risk assessments. The Kalari Syndicate currently ships agricultural products to the Vorthon Republic through Hegemony Space, Do-hyun explained. Round trip takes 6 weeks, costs 4,000 credits, and involves 17 different regulatory checkpoints. The representatives of those species nodded. It was exactly right. Earth's analysis suggests we could cut that to 3 weeks. 2,000 credits and 5 checkpoints by optimizing the route and streamlining the paperwork, Do-hyun continued. No political changes, no military restructuring, just better logistics. Syndicate leader Pelkari buzzed with excitement. Her species looked like giant bees and communicated through vibrations. This would save us millions of credits per year, Vorthon. Prime Minister Gexlan, who resembled a walking mushroom, released spores of agreement. Our farmers have been asking for faster shipping for decades, Do-hyun beamed. Exactly, and this is just one route. Imagine if we could optimize all of them. Meanwhile, in another conference room, Nae Young was having tea with a group of junior diplomats. She had somehow acquired a traditional tea set from each of their cultures and was serving everyone their favorite beverages. I hope you don't mind me asking, she said to Junior Ambassador Tixwell of the Insectoid Collective. But how do you manage translation protocols for your hive mind species? It must be incredibly complex. Tixwell made a pleased clicking sound. Nobody had ever asked about the technical challenges of his job before. Oh, it is. We have to convert individual thoughts into collective concepts, then translate those into linear speech patterns that other species can understand. That's fascinating, Na-young said sincerely. Earth has been working on group communication systems for our military units. We've developed some techniques that might be useful for translation protocols. She showed him a tablet displaying human research on networked communication. Tixwell's compound eyes widened. The humans had solved several problems that had been bothering his species for years. Would you be willing to share this research? He asked hopefully. Of course. Na-young smiled. We're all working toward the same goal. Better communication between species. The more we can help each other, the better everything works. Within 2 hours, Na-young had made friends with delegates from 12 different species. She learned their names, asked about their families, and remembered what everyone liked to drink. More importantly, she listened to their complaints about the current system and their ideas for improvements. In the legal department, Jinwoo was having the time of his life. He sat surrounded by law books, treaties, and legal precedents, looking like a child in a candy store. The head of the council's legal team, Magistrate Korthun, watched him with growing concern. Your legal system is remarkable, Jinwoo said admiringly. The way you've managed to create consistent laws across 40 different species with completely different cultural values. It's brilliant work. Korthun preened slightly. His species took great pride in their legal expertise. However, Jinwoo continued, I noticed some areas where the implementation might be improved. He gestured to a stack of papers beside him. For example, Article 15 of the Membership Charter guarantees all member species equal representation in council decisions. But the current voting system is based on military contribution, which automatically gives larger species more power. Korthun's tentacles twitched nervously. That system has maintained stability for millennia. Oh, absolutely, Jinwoo agreed. It's been very effective. I'm just wondering if there might be ways to maintain that stability while also honoring the Equal Representation Clause. He pulled out another document. Earth has some experience with this kind of challenge. We have nearly 200 different nations with different sizes and capabilities. We've developed several systems for ensuring both stability and representation. Jinwoo showed him examples of human governmental systems, federations, confederations, representative democracies, and hybrid models. Each one balanced power between large and small members in different ways. The key insight, Jinwoo explained, is that representation and power don't have to be the same thing. You can give everyone an equal voice while still acknowledging that different species contribute different amounts to the common good. Korthun found himself taking notes, These human legal concepts were actually quite sophisticated. Back in the main conference room, Do-hyun was wrapping up his presentation. The alien delegates were all leaning forward, asking questions and requesting more detailed analyses. The bottom line, Do-hyun said, is that the galaxy's economy could grow by 300% in the next 5 years with relatively minor adjustments to current systems. War Chief Kralthex looked skeptical. And what does Earth gain from all this? You cannot expect us to believe you are doing this from pure generosity. Do-hyun smiled. Of course not, War Chief. Earth benefits too. We gain access to new markets, new technologies, and new partnership opportunities. We also get to be part of something bigger than ourselves. He activated one final chart. This one showed Earth's projected role in the optimized galactic economy. They would indeed benefit significantly, but not by conquering or exploiting anyone. Instead, they would profit by making everyone else more successful. Earth specializes in optimization and problem-solving, Do-hyun explained. In your current system, we see dozens of problems that we know how to fix. Solving those problems benefits everyone, including us. Chancellor Vorthek studied the projections carefully. This assumes a level of cooperation that the assassination attempt happened at exactly 1437 Galactic Standard Time, during the lunch break between morning sessions and afternoon committee meetings. Hyun-ki was walking through the garden area of the council complex, discussing agricultural, trade policies with Ambassador Feldane of the Botanical Consortium. The would-be assassin was a Shodok warrior, a member of a species known for their stealth abilities and their skill with energy weapons. He materialized from thin air behind a flowering bush, raised his plasma rifle and aimed directly at Hyun-ki's head. Taeho was there before the alien could pull the trigger. The human security officer moved like water flowing around a stone. One moment he was standing 20 feet away, apparently admiring some purple flowers. The next moment he had the assassin's weapon in his own hands and the assassin face down in the decorative gravel. 47 seconds from initial threat identification to complete neutralization, Taeho said calmly, as if he were giving a weather report. He checked his watch and made a note on his tablet. Not bad, but I should have spotted the concealment field earlier. The assassin struggled briefly, then went limp. Taeho had used some kind of pressure point technique that left the alien conscious but unable to move. Hyun-ki barely glanced at the scene. He continued his conversation with Feldane as if nothing had happened. As I was saying, Ambassador, Earth's hydroponic systems could increase your crop yields by up to 40%, while using 70% less water. Security alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Armed guards came running from every direction. They found Taeho calmly zip-tying the assassin's hands while explaining exactly how he had detected the threat. The concealment field created a minor distortion in the light patterns around the azalea bushes. He told the head of security, a massive creature called Commander Brixtalk. Also, the assassin was breathing heavily due to nervousness, which created small temperature variations that showed up on thermal scanning. Commander Brixtalk stared at him. You have thermal scanning capability? Taeho tapped his glasses. Built-in sensors, standard equipment for Earth diplomatic security. We also have motion detection, electromagnetic field analysis, and chemical sensing capabilities. He gestured to the unconscious assassin. This individual has been surveilling our team for 3 days. He's employed by someone with access to high-level council security information, since he knew our exact schedule and the locations of all surveillance devices in this area. The alien security team looked embarrassed. They hadn't detected any of that. Furthermore, Taeho continued, pulling out another tablet. Based on the weapon type, entry method, and timing, this assassination attempt was ordered by someone who wanted to make it look like an internal council security failure, rather than an external attack. He showed them a detailed analysis of the assassination attempt, complete with suspect profiles and probability assessments. I estimate an 87% chance that the order came from within the council itself, specifically from someone opposed to Earth's integration proposals. Commander Brixtalk's armored plates rattled nervously. You prepared this analysis in advance? Of course, Taeho said simply. Threat assessment is an ongoing process. We've been tracking 17 different potential attack vectors since we arrived. By this time, a crowd had gathered. Alien delegates, staff members, and security personnel all stared at the scene. The humans stood calmly in the center of the chaos, looking like they dealt with assassination attempts every day. Ram was taking notes on her tablet, documenting everything for her report. Do-hyun was having a quiet conversation with several alien economists who had been nearby, reassuring them that this wouldn't affect the afternoon's budget presentations. Na-young was comforting a young alien intern who looked shaken by the violence. So-min stepped forward and addressed the crowd with the kind of voice that made everyone stop talking and listen. "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings," she said calmly, "I believe we've reached what humans call a teachable moment." The aliens stared at her. A teachable moment? Someone had just tried to murder their ambassador, and she was calling it a teachable moment? "This incident," So-min continued, "demonstrates several important points about the current security situation in council space." She activated a holographic display that appeared in the air above her. It showed statistics about political violence, assassination attempts, and security failures throughout the galaxy over the past 50 years. Political assassination attempts occur in council space at a rate of approximately 12 per year, she explained. Most are unsuccessful, but they create instability, increase security costs, and undermine confidence in the governmental system. The crowd listened despite themselves. The human was giving a lecture about assassination attempts while standing next to an actual assassin. Earth's preliminary analysis suggests that most of these attempts are motivated by resource competition and political frustration, So-min went on. Species that feel unheard or disadvantaged sometimes resort to violence because they see no other way to influence policy. She gestured to the assassin, who was now conscious but still paralyzed. This individual, for example, is a member of the Shadok species. The Shadoks have petitioned the Council 17 times over the past decade for increased representation, but their requests have been consistently denied due to their small population and limited economic contribution. Several aliens looked uncomfortable. This was information that wasn't supposed to be public knowledge. However, So-min added cheerfully, assassination attempts are actually a very inefficient way to create political change. They tend to produce defensive reactions, rather than policy modifications. She activated another display showing the typical aftermath of political violence: increased security measures, reduced civil liberties, and more authoritarian control. A much more effective approach, she concluded, is to address the underlying causes of political frustration through inclusive governance and economic opportunity. Hyun-ki finally looked up from his conversation about agriculture. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, as if he had just noticed the commotion. Chancellor Vorthak pushed through the crowd. His forearms were spread in an aggressive display, and his blue-gray skin had darkened with anger. "How dare you turn an assassination attempt into a political lecture?" he roared. Hyun-ki looked genuinely surprised. "I'm sorry, Chancellor. Was that inappropriate? We're still learning your cultural norms around crisis management." "Cultural norms?" Vorthak's voice went up an octave. "Someone tried to kill you." "Yes," Hyun-ki agreed calmly, "and now we have an opportunity to understand why that happened, and how to prevent similar incidents in the future." He gestured to Taeho, who pulled out yet another tablet. This one contained a complete psychological profile of the assassin, including his motivations, his employment history, and his connections to various political groups. "According to our analysis," Hyun-ki explained, "the assassin is actually a symptom of larger systemic issues in the Council's governance structure. He's not a criminal, he's a political actor who felt he had no other options." Jinwoo appeared beside him, carrying a stack of legal documents. "Actually, under Galactic Law Section 247, subsection 33, he's technically classified as a political prisoner rather than a criminal, since his actions were motivated by governmental policy rather than personal gain." The alien lawyers in the crowd began frantically checking their law books again. "This means," Jinwoo continued helpfully, "that he's entitled to a formal hearing before the council rather than a standard criminal trial. It's actually an excellent opportunity to address the Shadok species' concerns through proper legal channels." Commander Brickstock looked confused. Are you suggesting we should reward assassination attempts with political hearings? Not reward, So-min corrected gently. Address. The assassination attempt was wrong, but the concerns that motivated it might be legitimate. She showed them another hologram, this one displaying the Shadok homeworld and their current living conditions. It was not a pretty picture. Overcrowded cities, resource shortages, and a population that felt completely ignored by the galactic government. The Shadoks have been trying to get council attention for years, So-min explained. They've followed all the proper procedures, filed all the correct paperwork, and waited patiently for responses that never came. Na Young nodded sympathetically. It's actually very sad. They're a proud people with a lot to contribute, but they feel like nobody listens to them. Do-hyun stepped forward with his own tablet. From an economic perspective, the Shadoks have several valuable resources and capabilities that are currently being wasted due to their political isolation. His display showed potential trade opportunities, technological innovations, and cultural contributions that the Shadoks could provide to the galactic community. Integrating them properly into Council, systems would generate approximately 2 billion credits in new economic activity. Do-hyun added, much more cost-effective than increased security measures. The aliens stared at the humans in growing amazement. In less than an hour, they had neutralized an assassin, analyzed the political causes of the attempt, identified legal solutions, and calculated the economic benefits of addressing the underlying problems. War Chief. 3 days after the assassination attempt, the secret coalition against Earth held their first meeting. Representatives from the Dominion, the Empire, and the Alliance gathered in a private chamber deep within the Council complex. They had activated every security measure they knew: electromagnetic shielding, sound dampeners, and psychic barriers. They felt very clever and secretive. 2 hours later, Hyun-ki knocked on their door. "Good morning, everyone," he said cheerfully as he entered the room. "I brought coffee and pastries. I hope you don't mind the interruption." The 3 coalition leaders stared at him in shock. Supreme Commander Vexthul of the Dominion was the first to recover. His species looked like walking crystals, and his voice sounded like breaking glass. "How did you find this meeting?" he demanded. "This chamber is completely secure." "Oh, it is," Hyun-ki agreed, setting down a tray of refreshments on their conference table. "Very impressive security setup. We couldn't hear anything you were saying." He pulled out a chair and sat down as if he had been invited. "We just noticed that you 3 species had been requesting unusual amounts of private meeting space, and your scheduling pattern suggested coordination for some kind of group activity." Boram appeared beside him, carrying her usual tablet. "Plus, your economic advisors have been researching Earth's capabilities and looking for potential vulnerabilities. That kind of research usually indicates either partnership discussions or opposition planning." Do-hyun entered next, wheeling in a presentation cart. "And your military attachés have been asking very specific questions about human defensive capabilities and resource dependencies. That suggested the opposition planning option was more likely." So-min came in last, carrying a basket of what appeared to be alien flowers. "So we thought we'd come talk to you directly instead of trying to guess what you're concerned about." Alliance. Marshal Kethvorin made a sound like an angry whale. His species was aquatic and had to wear environmental suits to attend council meetings. "This is outrageous. You cannot simply invite yourselves to private meetings." "You're absolutely right," Na Young said, appearing in the doorway with a tea service. "We should have asked permission first. That was rude of us." She began setting up cups and saucers with practiced efficiency. "However, we were worried that if we requested a formal meeting, you might feel pressured to include other council members, and that could make it harder to have an honest conversation about your concerns." The coalition leaders looked around at each other in panic. Their secret meeting had been completely infiltrated by the people they were plotting against, and those people were serving them breakfast. Emperor Drathmore of the Empire tried to regain control of the situation. His species resembled giant insects with metallic exoskeletons. "We demand that you leave immediately. This is a private diplomatic consultation." "Of course it is," Hyun-ki said reasonably. "We're not here to spy or interfere. We just want to understand what we can do to address your concerns." He activated Du-hyun's presentation system. Charts and graphs appeared in the air above the table, right next to the Coalition's own secret planning documents. We've been analyzing your species, positions in the current galactic power structure, Yun-ki explained. All three of your governments have significant legitimate concerns about rapid changes to established systems. The first chart showed the current distribution of political and economic power among Council species. The Dominion, Empire, and Alliance were all in the top tier. They had the most influence, the largest territories, and the strongest militaries. Earth's proposals could potentially destabilize that power balance, Yun-ki continued. If smaller species become more economically successful and politically influential, that reduces your relative advantages. Supreme Commander Vexthul's crystal body flickered with surprised light patterns. The humans understood exactly what they were worried about. Furthermore, Boram added, our integration process could create precedents that other species might use to challenge existing treaty arrangements. That could lead to demands for renegotiation of agreements that currently favor your governments. She showed them a detailed analysis of potential political ramifications. Every concern the coalition had discussed was laid out clearly, along with probability assessments and impact projections. However, Do-hyun said, taking over the presentation, we think there might be ways to address those concerns while still implementing beneficial reforms. His chart showed modified versions of all the human proposals. These versions preserve the coalition species' advantages while still improving overall galactic efficiency. For example, he explained, instead of completely restructuring the U trade route system, we could implement a gradual transition that allows current power holders to maintain their positions while expanding opportunities for smaller species. Alliance Marshal Keth Voran bubbled nervously in his environmental suit. You are suggesting compromise? We're suggesting optimization, Somin corrected gently. Your concerns are completely valid. Any system change that doesn't account for existing stakeholder interests is likely to fail. She activated her own display, showing examples of successful reforms from human history. Earth has learned that the best way to implement change is to make sure everyone benefits, not just the people who were disadvantaged under the old system. Na-young poured tea for everyone while they absorbed this information. The alien beverages were perfectly prepared. The right temperature, the right strength, the right ceremonial presentation for each species. The key insight, she said as she worked, is that expanding opportunity doesn't have to mean redistributing existing power. You can make the overall pie bigger instead of fighting over the current pieces. Emperor Drathmore clicked his mandibles, thoughtfully. And how do you propose to do that? Hyun-ki smiled. By leveraging your existing advantages instead of trying to work around them. He activated a new presentation that focused specifically on the three coalition species. The Dominion has the most advanced manufacturing capabilities in the galaxy. The Empire has the best logistics and transportation networks. The Alliance has the most sophisticated financial and trading systems. Each species' strengths were displayed in detail, along with projections of how those strengths could be enhanced rather than threatened by the proposed reforms. Instead of seeing Earth's integration as competition, Hyun-ki explained, we could structure it as amplification. Earth provides optimization expertise and new technologies, while your species provide the infrastructure and experience to implement them effectively. Do-hyun took over again. The economic projections are actually quite favorable for all three of your governments. Instead of losing market share to smaller species, you would gain access to larger, more efficient markets. His charts showed potential revenue increases. The coalition species would make more money under the reformed system than they currently did under the existing one. But what about political influence? Supreme Commander Vexthul demanded. If smaller species become more successful, they will demand more representation. True, Jinwoo said, appearing with a cart full of legal documents. Nobody had noticed him arrive. However, political representation and practical influence don't have to be the same thing. He began distributing copies of proposed constitutional amendments. Earth's analysis suggests that you could actually increase your practical influence while appearing to decrease your formal power. The amendments created new council positions and committees that would give smaller species more representation. However, the actual decision-making power remained concentrated in areas where the larger species had natural advantages. For example, Jin Wu explained, smaller species would get more votes on cultural and scientific issues, but economic and security decisions would still be controlled by the species with the most relevant expertise and resources. Alliance Marshal Keth Voren studied the documents carefully. This would give us more influence over the areas we actually care about? Exactly, Jin Wu confirmed. Most political conflicts arise because everyone is competing for the same generic power. But different species have different priorities and different capabilities. So Min nodded enthusiastically. The Dominion doesn't really need to control agricultural policy, and the farming worlds don't need to make decisions about military strategy. Everyone would be happier focusing on what they're good at. The coalition leaders looked around at each other uncertainly. Their secret opposition meeting had somehow turned into a collaborative planning session. There is one more consideration, Taeho said, entering the room with his own set of documents. The military implications of the proposed changes. He activated a holographic display showing the current galactic security situation. It was not encouraging. Border conflicts, piracy, resource wars, and the ever-present threat of invasion from outside the Council's territory. Earth's preliminary assessment, Taeho continued, suggests that the current military structure is not optimal for addressing these challenges. He showed them comparative analyses of different military organizational models. The current system was based on each species maintaining separate forces that cooperated only during major crises. However, Taeho added, a more integrated approach could provide better security for everyone while 6 months later, Ambassador Hyun-Ki stood at the podium in the newly renovated Galactic Council chamber. The room looked much the same as before, but everything about how it functioned had changed. The floating platforms were arranged more efficiently, the translation systems worked better, and somehow everyone seemed more comfortable. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings, Hyun-Ki began. I want to thank everyone for your patience during what we've come to call the optimization transition. Period. Light laughter rippled through the chamber. Several alien species had adopted the human habit of making small jokes during formal presentations. It made everything feel more relaxed and productive. As you know, Hyun-Ki continued, today marks the official implementation of the reformed Galactic Council structure that we've all been working toward. He activated the presentation system, and holographic displays filled the space above the chamber. The data was beautiful, elegant charts showing increased trade, reduced conflicts, and improved cooperation throughout Council space. I'm pleased to report that galactic trade volume has increased by 412% since we began the optimization process, Hyun-Ki announced. Every member species has experienced significant economic growth, and we've successfully resolved 43 territorial disputes through negotiation rather than military action. The alien delegates applauded enthusiastically. They had good reason to be happy. Their civilizations were more prosperous than they had been in centuries. Boram took over the presentation from her position as the new Director of Economic Coordination. It was a position that hadn't existed 6 months ago, but somehow everyone had agreed it was necessary. The new integrated trade route system is operating at 97% efficiency, she reported. Shipping costs are down by an average of 60%, and delivery times have been reduced by 40%. Her charts showed cargo flows throughout the galaxy. Every major trade route now passed through systems where Earth had established coordination centers. Not by force or conquest, but because that was where the most efficient connections could be made. We've also successfully implemented the new currency exchange system, Boram continued. The standardized credit has been adopted by 38 species, and we expect full participation within the next year. The standardized credit was based on a complex formula that included resources, labor, and technological capabilities. Earth had developed the formula, managed the exchange rates, and provided the computing power to track transactions. They had become the galactic banking system almost by accident. Du Hyun, now serving as the Director of Resource Allocation, presented the next section of the report. Resource distribution efficiency has improved by 230%. We've eliminated food shortages in 17 systems and resolved water conflicts in 8 others. His displays showed supply chains that spanned the galaxy. Raw materials flowed from species that had too much to species that needed more. Finished goods moved in the opposite direction. Everyone got what they needed, and Earth's logistics algorithms made sure nothing was wasted. The key insight, Do-hyun explained, was that most resource conflicts were caused by distribution problems rather than actual shortages. The galaxy produces more than enough food and materials for everyone. We just needed better ways to get them where they were needed. Na-young stepped forward to discuss the cultural exchange programs. She was now the director of interspecies relations, a job that seemed to involve knowing everyone in the galaxy personally. I'm excited to report that we've facilitated over 12,000 cultural exchange visits between different species, she said with her usual bright smile. We've also established permanent cultural centers in 42 systems. Her presentation showed festivals, art exhibitions, and educational programs that had brought different species together. Somehow, learning about each other's cultures had made everyone more willing to cooperate on political and economic issues. The Universal Translator project has been particularly successful, Na-young added. We now have real-time translation capability for all known languages, and we're working on developing translation protocols for newly discovered species. The Universal Translator was another system that Earth managed, not because they had demanded that responsibility, but because they were the only ones who seemed interested in the technical challenges involved. So Min took over to discuss the conflict resolution programs. She was now the Director of Diplomatic Solutions, a position that involved turning every disagreement into a collaborative problem-solving exercise. I'm happy to report that we haven't had a single military conflict between council members in the past 6 months, she announced. We've resolved 107 disputes through the new mediation process. Her charts showed how conflicts were now handled. Structured negotiations, economic analysis, cultural consultation, and creative problem-solving. Most disputes turned out to have solutions that made everyone better off than they had been before the problem started. The key, So Min explained, was recognizing that most conflicts are caused by misunderstandings or resource competition. Once you address the underlying issues, the surface disagreements usually resolve themselves. Taeho presented the security report as the new Director of Galactic Defense Coordination. The reformed military structure had been his greatest success. The integrated defense network has proven highly effective, he reported. We've repelled 4 separate pirate attacks, prevented 2 border incursions, and successfully negotiated peaceful contact with 3 previously unknown species. His displays showed the new military organization. Each species contributed what they did best: manufacturing, logistics, intelligence, specialized troops, or financial support. Earth provided strategic coordination and tactical analysis. Defense. Spending has actually decreased by an average of 30% per species, Taeho added, while overall security capabilities have increased by over 200%. The alien military leaders nodded approvingly. They had more effective protection at lower cost. It was exactly what every military commander wanted. Jin Woo gave the legal report as the new Director of Galactic Justice. The reformed legal system was perhaps the most impressive achievement of all. The new constitutional framework has been ratified by all 40 member species, he announced. We've successfully resolved over 300 legal disputes and established consistent justice standards throughout council space. His presentation showed the elegant legal structure that now governed the galaxy. Every species had representation appropriate to their size and capabilities. Every individual had rights that were protected regardless of which system they lived in. Every dispute had clear procedures for resolution. The most important change, Jinwoo explained, was establishing the principle that laws should serve the people rather than the governments. When everyone has a stake in the legal system, everyone has an incentive to make it work fairly. Chancellor Vorthak, who was now serving as the Director of Legislative Affairs under the new system, took the podium to present the final report. He looked much more relaxed than he had 6 months ago. The reformed Galactic Council has exceeded all projected performance metrics, he announced. Member species satisfaction is at an all-time high. Economic growth continues to accelerate, and we have successfully integrated 7 new species into council membership. He paused and looked around the chamber. I must admit, when the humans first arrived, I was skeptical of their proposals. The changes they suggested seemed too dramatic and too rapid. Light laughter rippled through the chamber again. Everyone remembered those first meetings. However, Vorthak continued, I have learned that the humans have a remarkable talent for making complex changes seem simple and natural. They don't impose their ideas. They help you discover that their ideas are actually your ideas. More. Laughter, this time with a note of rueful appreciation. Every species in the chamber had experienced that phenomenon. The result, Vorthak concluded, is a galactic civilization that is more prosperous, more peaceful, and more just than anything we had achieved in the previous 1,000 years of council history. The applause that followed was genuine and enthusiastic. The aliens had good reason to celebrate. Their galaxy was a better place than it had ever been. Yunki returned to the podium for his closing remarks. Before we adjourn, I want to address one question that I know many of you have been thinking about. The chamber went quiet. Everyone was indeed wondering the same thing. 6 months ago, Earth was a newcomer to galactic civilization. Yunki said, Today humans hold 17 of the 23 senior administrative positions in the council. We manage most of the economic systems, coordinate the military forces, and oversee the legal framework. He looked around the room, making eye contact with delegates from every species. I want to assure everyone that this was never our intention, he continued. Earth came here seeking partnership, not dominance. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably. The humans' intentions had been a subject of much speculation. However, Yunki added with his characteristic smile, we've discovered that we're very good at administration. Organization, optimization, and system management seem to be natural. Human talents. He activated one final